Hi folks, welcome to Crisco's Corner. Unfiltered commentary. Not your truth, the real truth. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for your support. Welcome back from KARE 11. I wish it didn't have to happen. Alternate juror reflects on Derek Chauvin trial. A juror didn't know she was an alternate in Chauvin's trial. Details why she supports the former Minneapolis police officer being convicted in George Floyd's murder. Now, I didn't know this. I think there's two alternates, but they don't know they're alternates, which in a kind of way is a good thing because they'll pay attention thinking they're a regular juror. And then at the very end, when the jury went for the deliberation, she was told in another alternate that you're out, which is kind of smart. A woman who sat as an alternate on the jury that found Derek Chauvin guilty in George Floyd's murder is speaking out about what it was like to parse through nearly 3 weeks of testimony in the former Minneapolis officer's high-profile trial. Brooklyn Center resident, which is the riots are going on right now because of the other shooting, the young man that was shot by the officer, supposedly the story goes, she thought she was tasing him. It ended up being a gun and he died. Resident Lisa Christensen told KARE 11's Lou Ragus about her role on the jury as another police killing unfolded in her neighborhood. Now, the judge wouldn't sequester the jury. They wouldn't sequester the jury during deliberations. Huge mistake. This woman had to drive back and forth every day through all the rioting through her town. And she's sitting on the jury. Not a good idea. The appeal is going to be, what somebody say, 10% of cases like this or appeal actually make appeal. This will be a slam dunk for appeal. There's a lot of stuff going on. Let's read on. Christensen, who lives in the city where a white officer shot and killed a 20-year-old black man during a traffic stop this month, that if she had been part of the deliberations, she would have found Chauvin guilty. But Christensen had no idea that she was one of the two alternates until the judge dismissed her right before the 12 jurors were sequestered. And this is a picture of some of her notes. Interviewer, did you know that you're going to be an alternate in the case? Christensen, no, I did not. Were you disappointed when you found out you were an alternative? I was. I spent 3 weeks of my time getting invested and going through all the kinds of emotions. My heart broke a little when he turned and said, number 96, you're an alternate. When you made it on the jury, how much did you know about the case and what were your thoughts in being a part of it? I saw the video, but not in its entirety, and there's the problem. The media would only show the part where he was on the ground with his knee on his back and alternate between his back and his neck. I saw it 2 or 3 times on the news. I do not use social media, so I did not post anything or see anything on there. So you were the perfect juror in that aspect. You came in about as clean a slate as somebody can have, considering how big of a case this was. Well, no, because she didn't see the whole video, but we'll get into that. Christensen, yeah, I did tell them that I saw the settlement run across the bottom of the screen on day one. There's one of the reasons for appeal. The city did not want to give the civil suit settlement after the trial. To do it just days before the trial was their way of saying, F you, we don't want a fair trial. We want the outcome we think is justice. And that, folks, is incredibly dangerous. Of course, she's going to say the statement she says next. She's not going to say it influenced me. I knew it was a separate case. I knew civil cases are different with different rules, so it did not affect me. Well, it has to. You're not a robot. I was not surprised there was a settlement, but I was surprised they announced it beforehand. Yeah. Did you want to be a juror? I had mixed feelings. There was a question on the questionnaire about it, and I did not know. The reason at that time was I did not know what the outcome was going to be, so I felt like either way you were going to disappoint one group or the other. I did not want to go through rioting and destruction again. I was concerned about people coming to my house if they were not happy with the verdict. And there you have the appeal. Well, John, how come the appeal? She was an alternate. She wasn't in the final decision because the other 12 people are humans too. And their names would eventually give out. And if you remember, they caught somebody, some progressive left-wing nut, taking pictures with a cell phone of the jurors so they could put it on social media, and she got caught. So who knows? They're thinking, my God, how many did it and didn't get caught? How many wore a secret camera? Or photographed us. Let me read that again. I did not want to go through rioting and destruction again, and I was concerned about people coming to my house if they were not happy with their verdict. And as you saw, they got the verdict they wanted, guilty on all counts, but they rioted anyway. Lisa Christensen, who was a juror, lived in Brooklyn Center one night, said she could hardly make it home after testimony ended because of protesters blocking intersections. And don't think for a minute that didn't have an effect on her and the other jurors. What were your thoughts on the fact the trial was televised? It made it more intense, at least. I thought that in the beginning I was glad it was because it made it transparent. So everybody knows and cannot question what happened. You were an alternate, but would you have voted guilty or not guilty? Now, here's the thing. She can't say not guilty. I'm not saying this woman's not telling the truth. That's not what I mean. She can't say not guilty. She gets the worst of both worlds. She wasn't part of the final decision, and she gets her house trashed, maybe even burned down, or her seriously hurt or worse. I would have voted guilty. However, at the end, the judge did read us the rules for deliberation, but it was quick, and I could not absorb it. Don't think for a minute that this transcription of this interview is going to be part of the appeal. I would have said guilty on some level. After I was excused, I did not look at the jury instructions any longer. I do not know how hard that process was, but I feel like Chauvin is responsible for Floyd's death. Why? I think the prosecution did a good presentation of their case. Dr. Tobin was one I really related to. I feel like all the doctors, one way or another, said the same thing. If you remember, the cause of death is undetermined. Did George Floyd die from a low level of oxygen? That's a related article I won't get into now. Did you think the use of force was reasonable? I do not. Now, if you remember, George Floyd was in the car handcuffed and he was freaking out. And that was the fatal mistake for the officer. Either bring him to the hospital in the squad car or bring him to the station for booking and let the station chief or whoever's in charge decide. And that was his fatal mistake, taking him out of the car. Once you have the suspect in custody, in the car, you don't put anybody at risk. He was freaking out, so they took him out and put him on the ground as per his request. And that was both their dooms, George Floyd and the officer. Did you think that Derek Chauvin caused George Floyd's death? I feel like the kneeling on the neck for so long did, yes. If you look at the real video from the other angle, he wasn't on his neck. Was it 8, 9 minutes, whatever it was? I doubt if he was on his neck a third of the time, alternating back and forth. You heard a lot of testimony about the use of force. Was the force reasonable, and did the knee cause Floyd's death? It seemed like those were the major questions that were presented to you. Yes, we heard a lot about the use of force. It was excessive. Was it necessary? When do police officers stop it? And it could have been stopped at one point. I kept thinking about the critical decision-making model that was presented. It was in the back of my mind about how they said you must reassess constantly, and I felt like that was not done. Reassess what? Guy was freaking out, resisting for a long time. And he's a pretty good-sized guy. And that's the thing. He could have tased him. He could have done a lot of other stuff, but he chose not to. He could have tased him at the beginning before he cuffed him and put him in the squad car. This whole thing sucks. Just a comedy of errors or the illusion of errors. Which witness convinced you was unreasonable use of force? I thought the LAPD Sergeant Jody Steiger, the prosecution expert, did a good job explaining that to us. Well, it was meaningful to you to have a Minneapolis police officer testify against Chauvin Christensen. It was. Some of the trainers said, I don't even know what that is. We don't train like that, which was not true because they did show videos, training videos of the Minneapolis police with a knee on the back. But it was helpful to hear because they said they can use force, but not seem like they could use that type of force. When it came to the medical testimony, what was it about Dr. Tobin that was so impactful on you? He broke it down to where he could understand it. He had us demonstrate. We're all in the jury touching our necks so we could feel that he was trying to make us feel. But what really did it was when he said, right there at the point when George Floyd had that seizure, and that is where he died. What was a turning point for you in the trial? It was the turning point. I consider the defense's points about the enlarged heart, the narrowing of the arteries, the drug use, but regardless, I do not think he would have passed away at that day at that time. Yeah, he might have passed away an hour later. Here's the thing. Say George Floyd had terminal cancer, last stages of terminal cancer. He could die at any moment, literally, from this cancer. And you get in a fight with him and punch him in the mouth and knock him out. And he dies. Did you murder him? Can you be charged with manslaughter? He was moments from death anyway. It's just such a comedy of ridiculous errors. Keep him in the squad car. He had him cuffed. That was the fatal mistake. Was it ever any moments that it tipped toward the defense for you? On the first or second day, I felt like Mr. Nelson did a really good job. He was believable and brought a lot of good points when he said, we're just concentrating on those 9 minutes and 29 seconds, and no one is talking about the 16 minutes prior. It was kind of an eye-opener. I did listen to what he said, and I think the officers were reasonable during the first 16 minutes. But Mr. Floyd was put in the prone position on the ground, and it all seemed to go out the window. It didn't apply any longer. Like I said, the fatal mistake. What was the key evidence in your opinion? The testimony by the experts, the forensics, and the perspectives from the different videos. I think it would have been harder to understand exactly what happened, but the videos are what really nailed it. Which video stuck with you? The bystanders, Miss Fraser's video. I think she was very brave to tape it and post it. Did the testimony impact you as well? It did. I was sitting close to the door, so I was close to the witness stand. I know they were testifying, but I felt like I could feel it. It broke my heart when she said that she apologized to Mr. Floyd and wish she did more to save his life. That is a lot for a 7-year-old to go through. See emotion. And that's the problem with what we'll call regular juries rather than a judge is the jury. I'll tell you the truth. If he asked for a non-jury trial, I think he might have got a lot better off. But if you remember, the officer wanted to plead guilty to third-degree murder, and they said no. Were you left with any lingering questions? At the very end, when no one really thought about the carbon monoxide issue, I was wondering why I was thrown at the last minute. I do not know why they did not bring it up sooner if they were going to talk about it. Plus, nobody could say if the squad car was on or off. Nobody could say if the squad car was on or off. What was your impression of Eric Nelson, Chauvin's lawyer? I think he did a really good job. I think he had a lot to do because it was him and the assistant. And you look at the prosecution team, and they had 4 lawyers, volunteers, and aides. They had a big crew compared to Mr. Nelson. I think he was credible and made a lot of good points. What was your impression of the prosecutor? He was relatable. I think he took his time and presented stuff well. He was not trying to make us believe something, but rather bring it up and make us think about it. And it goes on to ask about the rest. About the judge, he was very fair. I was very impressed with him. When they were dismissed, he asked us to come to his chambers out of pure courtesy. He didn't have to do that, and I was very appreciative of reaching out to us, showing concern. All this is emotion, 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 emotion. What was your impression of Derek Chauvin? Where I was sitting, I could look up and lock eyes with him. It made me feel a little uncomfortable. He had nowhere to look either, so it was just kind of weird. I do not think he was trying to make any gestures by that at all. I thought he was smaller in person. In the pictures that I have seen, he looked bigger and taller than when he was. About his demeanor in the courtroom. Take anything from him? No, I did not. Most of the time, he was just writing as much as we were. I think he was trying to pay attention and maybe write down questions and concerns that he hadn't passed along to his lawyers. The still picture from the video with his hand in his pocket kind of got to me. Almost like he was thinking, this is my job, don't tell me what to do. He was not going to listen to what anybody had to say because he was in charge. That bothered me. If he had testified, that changed your mind. No, I don't think he would have. He should have testified. I think the prosecution would have torn him up thinking he made a good choice. I don't agree, but... And it goes on through this and this and all the questions and all. You can stop the video. I'll go through all over here. And it goes about, they asked her about this, about that. If you could see anything Derek Chauvin, what would you say? I am sad for him too. I wish it didn't have to happen. I do know how it goes from a $20 counterfeit bill to somebody dying. You should have just written him a ticket and let him go. I think it got out of hand quick. Well, if you remember, he was in a car, if I'm not mistaken. You're going to cut him a ticket and let him drive that high? So she wasn't really part of the details. A lot of the details she didn't get. She said she saw the whole video, the whole 16 minutes, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. She was intimidated. She was intimidated. And that's going to be the problem on appeal for the prosecution. I'll read this again. I do not want to go through rioting and destruction again, and I was concerned about people coming to my house if they were not happy with the verdict. That is mob justice. Now, I want you to think about for a minute this. I don't know if this was a fair trial or not. I really don't know, frankly. I think the settlement before the case was tried was a huge error, a tremendous error. Putting your thumb on the scale of justice is not a good idea. I don't care if it's a cop or not. But not sequestering the jury, big mistake. Not sequestering the jury during deliberations, big mistake. Having it so close to home like this, not changing the venue, big mistake. And those of you who say, well, he deserved it. So it doesn't matter how we got here as long as we got to the result that we wanted, that was justice. Think about this for a minute if it was reversed. Say it was a young black man that was accused of murdering a white woman. And thousands of white people were rioting and protesting all over the city, causing all kinds of damage and chaos and threatening people. We want this black so-and-so. We want him in prison. Blah, 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 blah. Intimidated everything. And then this verdict came down. Say it was murder in this case with a young black man and a young white woman that he supposedly killed. And then this verdict came down with all the protesting and all the pressure on the jurors. They would be screaming, holy hell. But here's the fine point of it that people aren't getting. If this was tried unjustly, if this gentleman did not get a fair trial, people say that's okay because he was guilty in their mind. That is incredibly dangerous for a lot of reasons. One is, what about the next trial for the next charge, and the one after that, and the one after that? They're always going to wonder, does this system work anymore? There's two things that will bring a republic down faster than anything, even economic hardship, even a pandemic. The two things that will bring it down quickly are the loss of faith in the judicial system and the loss of faith in the security of elections. Those two things together are a disaster for republics. So we're going to see what happens. We'll see if he appeals, and while his appeal is in place, whether they release him on bail or still hold him, there's a lot. This is going to go on for a couple of years, folks. We'll see. But the whole thing's a tragedy all the way around. And when she said the couple of things she did, you can tell she wasn't paying attention. These people were using pure emotion. Does that mean they didn't come to a just verdict? No, it doesn't mean they did, or it doesn't mean they didn't. I just don't know. And most people thought after this, the rioting would stop. Now they have an autonomous zone. There's rioting in other cities. There's rioting in New York. These people are never satisfied. Never satisfied. This could be the beginning of a witch hunt. I think what's going to happen is you're going to have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people quitting police departments all around the country. The ones that are older grab their pensions, even though they don't want to, they have enough time in, or get out of the big cities as a police officer and go into smaller municipalities. And it's going to lead to a disaster for the minority communities in these big cities. Crime is going to be way, way, way up. And in these big cities, usually in blue states, these poor people can't buy firearms to protect themselves because of the blue state, the ridiculous laws that make it almost impossible for people to defend themselves with firearms. It's going to be a disaster. We'll see. But history repeats itself all the time, and this has been done several times in our history. So there it is, folks. Did the officer get a fair trial or not? I really don't know. What are your thoughts? And until next time, goodbye and good luck.